Hello, everyone. God bless you. Thank you for joining me on Keep the Testimony Alive. I trust that you have been doing well. It's a new year, and we are already in February 1st today as we speak. Thank you again for your support over the months. We couldn't have uh, come this far. We have been encouraged with your support. Many of you have sent texts or Facebook connected and just encouraging thoughts, and it has been wonderful and certainly appreciative. My apologies that we were not here in January. And of course, we could not help it. Some of us have had this terrible flu. I'm not going to call it you know what, but God has been good and we are up to scratch. We are doing much, much better. Some of my guests also were not well. And so we will hear from them in the coming months, coming weeks, hopefully. Well, we are excited and we are having another session tonight, this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you're going to be viewing this program from, whether live or at a later time. And so, again, we are here. I have some guests that I want to bring in to join me this for this episode, and I want them to come in at this time. I know I have my daughter, Katira Morris. God bless you. My other new daughter, Rahwa, Sister Rahwa, God bless you. And my engineer, my background technical person, my son, Jonathan. Thank you again for all joining. You didn't want Mom to be by herself, so I brought my family in this for this episode to just talk about this wonderful, wonderful event and celebration of Black history. And so we mentioned highlighting Black history, and this is only going to be part one, as we're going to be talking about a very, very special trailblazer. I want to call him, in absentia, my guest, Dr. Carter Woodson. We wish we had him here in person because there's so many
We
questions
do.
that we could ask him, seeing that he is the founding father of Black History Month, right?
Absolutely.
I know we've been celebrating Black History Month, some of you all your life. I've been celebrating Black History Month for a number of years now. And I think people don't realize, like, how did this all happen? How did this all start? Where did it come from? Who thought of this? And it had to be somebody. And hence we have talking about Dr. Carter tonight. And in my reading, and I wish I had more time to just keep reading, because as I'm reading about him, and I'm sure all of you, you can attest to the fact that just so much information, we can only scratch the surface
Absolutely.
in this episode, right? Because in an hour and 15 minutes, we can hardly give him what he deserves. But we're going to try anyways, and we want to keep his testimony alive by hence bringing information about one of our founders of Black history, a wonderful, great man, and his name is Dr. Carter G. Woodson. I think, first of all, before we go ahead and talk about him, Elder John, you and I have been on over and over several times, but I think it's the first time for who? Whose first time is it on Keep the Testimony Alive? All right.
That's right.
So
The
my
two
two
ladies.
daughters, their first time. Well, welcome to Keep the Testimony Alive, and I
Thank you for
encourage you.
having us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Y'all look beautiful, handsome. Everyone's looking lovely. And just relax. And we just want to talk. We just want to have a conversation. And let me just put it out there. We're not historians, researchers of any kind, but we've done a little bit of reading, and we just thought it, deserving and fitting, rather. That's the word I'm looking for. That we talk about Dr. Carter, who is a historian. He's an author, and he has written many books over the course of his lifetime. Some of these books, since I'm there, I will just mention. 1915, he wrote The Education of the Negro
Yes, yes.
prior to 1861. And another book, 1922, he wrote The Negro in Our History. And one more I will mention is The Miseducation of the Negro. And when I think about the last one, especially, I think this was really one of his mandate, his mission that he would correct, because the education system didn't do the Negro, the Black history rather, justice. So he wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. Matter of fact, he wrote about, I understand, the church and Black history.
He
So,
did.
yeah, he wrote about churches, and which we'll talk about that this month. I think what we're going to do is we want to come on every week because we missed January. And there's just so much information about Black history that we kind of need to just kind of get it out there a little bit. That I think, yeah, let's come on for every week for the month of February, if that's possible, God being our help, right? Let's come on, let's be on next week and the following week and the following week. And let's just talk about, Black history, because there's so much information. And of course, we will have other panelists that will be joining us and other speakers that can speak to this topic of Black history. So Dr. Carter, he was born in Virginia. So he's an American, 1875 in December. I can't even imagine. So 1875 in Virginia. And he did die at the age of 75 years old, April 1950 in Washington. So we look at him, definitely, he is known to be a groundbreaking historian, groundbreaking historian. He thought out of the box, he was passionate, he was committed. I like that. And he was so dedicated to the mandate, the mission. And you know how all of us, we feel that, we've got a mission. There's something that we are passionate about, and we've just got to do it. He had such a drive to get this information out to the world and to celebrate Black history. And so we see that. So not only was he groundbreaking historian and an author, he was the second Black man to earn a PhD from Harvard University.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's amazing.
And what's amazing about that to me, it's like, he broke the cycle of life. So, because his parents as former slaves, right? Matter of fact, he couldn't go to school for many years until he was a young adult,
Right.
because he had to help on the farm. They were poor, and didn't have didn't have almost anything. But so he had to be missing out of school to help. But yet still he persevered. I think, Katura, you talked about that word persevere. What does that mean to you?
I mean, when you're thinking about perseverance, and how does one embody that in its entirety?
Mhm.
This man, Mr. Carter Woodson, was a true embodiment of that. As you just
Mhm.
mentioned, to come from the lineage of former slaves into one of the greatest men of history in reference to the African American, history, American history. He
Hmm.
contributed so much, and I'm sure we're going to go into that a little bit further. But he didn't allow his lineage, where he came from, not
Right,
that it was so much a
right.
negative from his parents' perspective, but
Mhm.
from what they were born into. It was,
Mhm.
slavery was a very horrific time period in American culture and society, but he did not allow that to determine his future. And he was able to put pen to paper, and he was
Wow.
able to change the course of history as we know it in a very important way. So I think when you talk about perseverance, he embodied that because he was able to go against the grain and to, irrespective of, his time, his hardships in life, the lack of money, the lack of, having accessibility to education like we do now, he was still able to make some immense changes. And
Yes,
so
yes.
I think that's important. If we're called to persevere, then we are called to push against the grain and to do something out of the ordinary and something
Mm.
outstanding. He did that.
Mhm. Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think of where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Absolutely.
Elder John, where there's a will, there's a way.
Well, I think before we get even too far down the pathway of where he ended up, I always think, especially during this particular time of the year when we are in Black History, that it's important for us to recognize where we're coming from. That's the purpose of
Absolutely.
this month. And when you look at what he had to overcome, as we've been already mentioning already, that he is the son of some former slaves, and he's basically spent most of his life up until the age of 19 working in the coal mines. Right,
Mm,
he's working in a really hard, dangerous environment, if you will. And something that was interesting when I was kind of doing a little bit of research is that he completed before going to high school the 4 month, and I say that right, the 4 month term that was all the education that black people could get at that time during that point, that the high school education or whatever you want to call it at that time was only 4 months. And it just really represents the obstacles that he would have had to face as much as everyone else that was in that time period that was of African descent. You'd only have education worth of 4 months. And that was supposed to be the sum total of all that you could learn as a Negro in America at that time. And so it's just amazing that he was able to overcome that. Again, going
mhm.
through high school, starting it at 19, and taking a 4 year term and cutting it in half to only doing it in 2 years. Just further represents, how hard he was willing to work, his discipline that's required,
Absolutely.
and I think we can't take that away. It's not just this God given thing that somehow you just stumble into this kind of greatness.
Yeah.
There was obviously a lot of hard work, labor, and discipline that he certainly displayed, that I think is worthy of note that we should say to him. But it does speak to the dire situation it was, where education was not so readily accessible, and I think it's
Yes,
important for us as young people today
yes,
that are living in this society. Sometimes we take it for granted. High school. I know when
uh,
I was
that's
growing
right.
up, sometimes we took
Right.
it for granted. Right? I
Yes,
don't want to go to
yes.
school today.
It's true.
Man, people were fighting for school for years, for
Wow.
decades,
Yes, yes,
generations. Maybe we can even argue
right.
that. And we take it for granted. I don't want to wake up and things of that sort. And I think just highlighting that element of Dr. Woodson's life should help us to be a little bit more appreciative of what we have today, where
Yes,
we can that theoretically there are no socioeconomic standards or barriers to you having education in this country, or at least
that's
here
right.
in North America.
So we should really seize the opportunity,
Yeah,
seize
see
the
opportunity for
opportunity
sure to take it.
of getting a good education, because people like Dr. Carter, as you said, Katura, is they persevered in all of that, all the obstacles, all the challenges. He
Yeah.
came out with his master's degree, his PhD degree. He wrote numerous books,
Books. Yeah.
right, because of the passion. That's what comes across to me, and the mission. It's like as if I've got to do this. He had this drive that he had to do this. Sister Rahwa, your father is a senior, and if you can tell us a little bit about where he lives, where he was born, and his achievement, educational achievement. I'm sure that he had some challenges, but again, he took the opportunity and made sure he got that under his belt. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. It's funny that you bring that up because when I do look at people like Dr. Carter, I think about how difficult it must have been during those times and how easy it is for us now, but we really do um, stand on their shoulders. And they've paved the way for us to have the opportunities that we have today. And it's very easy for me to think of my parents. So they grew up and were born in a time where there was war happening in our country. And they actually didn't even have the opportunity to grow up. They weren't in the city, they were in the village. So my father,
Mm,
there are stories of him not even owning a pair of shoes when he was in high
mm,
school, or, when he would study later in the evening, he would have to go under the lampshades that were on the street to do his work. But to see where they started and where they've the journey that they took and where they are today, it's so inspiring and difficult to ignore. I think we all do have to hold on to what they've done and allow that to be the fire that's, that pushes us to also go even further than that. So thinking about where someone like my father started from, similarly, I feel he really did believe that there, was a calling, something that he felt he was meant to do. And he said that even at times where, he believes he was put on this earth for the purpose of what he accomplished. So starting from in the village, going to university, and getting opportunities in the country of Ethiopia. So he grew up and was born in Eritrea, moved to Ethiopia, Eastern Africa, for university. He was able to do pre-med and then go in medical school in England. And along the entire way was on scholarship, so never needed to use money from his parents or anything like that, but just continued to strive. And something that I see from Dr. Carter that I can align with what my parents also went through is that the work that they do is completely selfless and has so much more to do with their community than it does, with them. The quote that my father would always tell us would be, ask not, the quote that was given by one of the presidents of the US, but ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And that in of itself is such a powerful statement, and it's such an enabling statement, and allows us to really recognize that we have such a big part to play.
Yes.
And we're not just small characters swept up by how where the world takes us, but we can actually also contribute in a huge way, because we've been given so much more of an opportunity. I could talk forever about it, but it's definitely an inspiring conversation.
For sure.
And I love that too, Rockwell, how you said about, doing this, attributing your gift for your people. And the same thing with Dr. Carter. He strongly believed that the Negro, as he called it, the Negro was not being taught or educated correctly, right? And he felt it, that it was his mandate, it was his responsibility to make sure that Blacks were receiving the proper education in the right facilities and getting the right information. And I think when you talk about, yes, Bishop, when you talk about being selfless, I think that's important to know. Selfless, because he dedicated his life to putting, Blacks in better positions.
That's right. Making them, that's right.
More educated. And education was such a major move for him that he pushed it with whatever, you talk about his career path. That was his major push. Even in the books that he wrote, it was all about educating the people. And so in order to really, be who, he was called to be, he had to come with a humble and selfless mindset. And I think he really did that, just like your father, Rockwell.
Definitely. Are we aware that before it was called Black History Month, it was called Negro History Week?
Correct.
Right. So, it was changed. And I think about, again, his motivation, what motivated him. And one of the things that, I understand is that it was white historians that were trying to erase Black history. Right. So you could just imagine I could just see him right now, his blood boiling to say, what? Right. And the Negro students were taught that Negroes don't have a history. How can you say they don't have a history? Everybody has a history, whether you know it or not, but everybody has a history. Right. And so his mission was to make Black history visible and make it appreciated. And here we are. I think there's so many different ways that we can make it visible, even continuing today. And here we are, this little platform, Keep the Testimony Alive, right? We are making it visible, because I'm sure somebody's going to tune in that is going to say, hey, I didn't know that, wow, it used to be called Negro History Week. I didn't know that the reason why he put it even in February was so and so and so, right? And did you folks catch that one? Did you read that one? All right, go ahead, Katura.
Well, for one, it's funny because in high school, we used to have this running joke that why were we given the shortest month out of the entire year? When in fact, when in practice, we weren't given anything. He chose to have Negro Week, actually, when it started in February. And it really was, out of admonition for President Abraham Lincoln. His
Mm-hmm.
birthday, I believe, was February the 12th, as
Mm-hmm.
well as Frederick Douglass, an
That's right.
amazing man who was also
Yes.
a former slave. His birthday
Yes.
was February the 14th, if I do believe. And
Mm.
so he chose to do it in February to really commemorate those two individuals that contributed to the Black struggle. So it
That's
wasn't
right.
so much that we were given the shortest month. He chose it for those
Yeah.
reasons. So
That's right. So here
And I
we
do
are.
remember us getting upset about that. I
we
remember
did.
thinking, we may need to do some kind of a rally and change the
Right.
month.
Right.
But
So
no,
here,
it was a special month for
exactly.
that
Here we
reason.
are blaming non-blacks. Like, yeah, we get how come we only get, the shortest month?
No.
But no, the very father of Black history was, he picked that month of February. Do you folks think that, knowing his mission, do you think that it's something that we should continue his mission? And if so, like, what are some of the ways that we can continue his
Mm.
legacy, if I can put it that way, also of Dr. Carter? Go ahead, Elder John.
Well, I think when well, first off, let me answer the question and say absolutely and resoundingly yes. I
Okay.
think
Absolutely.
it is very clear if you have any form of social media, if you've read any news article, if you've
Mhm.
watched any news, if you watched anything in the last, let's just say 2 to 3 years, man, you could say the last week. If you've read anything and been aware and open in any way, you can recognize that there is still a pressing need for Black rights, for Black civil rights, and for the world to understand. I think right now, just the other day, I think it was just yesterday, at least 2 days ago, in the case about Ahmaud Arbery, I guess that
Yeah.
Yes.
where they were, he was unfortunately murdered on the
Yeah.
street for jogging. The Department of Justice. I don't know all of the parameters. I've just been reading a few things over the last couple of days. They'd come to a plea agreement to kind of remove or reduce the charges and for the hate crime portion of it, not the murder part. That was pretty clear, but they wanted to kind of remove it from being a hate crime so that the father and son, those that were being, that are having this sentence, they wouldn't have to go into state prison. They can go into a nicer prison, less,
And
Right.
that's right.
just have a better time, if you will,
Hmm.
so they can serve out their time. And I thought, man, isn't that amazing that yet again, here we are in the state of Georgia or whatever it is, that they're trying to move something
That's right.
that's so clearly fueled by
Clear.
hate. They want it to be, hey, it's okay. We can recognize that it's a murder, but let's not make it a hate crime. Let's see if we can change the narrative from it being a
Right.
hate crime.
Hmm.
And thankfully, from everything that I've heard, that the judge has struck that down and refused to do that. And I think it just let me know again that we need more education. We need
Yeah.
not just for blacks, but also
Mm.
for everyone else, right?
Absolutely.
If we're going to move into what I call, or what we refer to as allyship, where we're looking for people to ally with Black people, we need education. And as I said before, I remember growing up and hearing the saying that you can't truly determine or really understand where you're going if you don't understand where you're coming from. And we see this so many times, right? If it
Right.
be
Right.
all the matter, what we refer to now as the Karen situation or the Soho girl, and all these people who just don't have the education. I resoundingly say yes. We need more of it. I'm proud of every company and family and people who are doing that, who are trying to take some time to educate whoever they can possibly. But I do think we do have to continue to keep the mission. I've heard of people trying to say, well, we don't really need Black History Month anymore. It's being taught in schools, or there's a poster that I remember seeing
Mm.
somewhere in the cafeteria, as if all of a sudden all of Black history has just been integrated equally or appropriately, let me say it that way, into our education system. I think we do need it resoundingly. I think we need more emphasis on it, so that we don't continue to have these stories, unfortunately, that we're hearing where, that are so, horrific and tragic. I think if we could normalize Blacks among the community, maybe we could have less of these circumstances. But the truth is, we're still a far cry away from where we need to be. I'm proud of the situation, the steps we've taken, but I think we need a lot more.
Okay. So you're saying then this, so you're right. So there's definitely a need, and Sister Rafa, I'm sure you
Definitely.
you all agree, right, to highlight our, what do we say, the stories of our predecessors, right? And Sister Rafa, you mentioned about standing on shoulders. Sir Isaac Newton talked about standing on shoulders of giants, right? So, but before we go there, what about, so if we are to continue this mission, this legacy of Dr. Carter, and let's talk a little bit about some of the ways we can do it. I know you just touched it, because I'm thinking about, what about, I know churches, the churches that we associate with, our church and all the churches that we know of, they have a Black History night where they will, celebrate Black history. I thought, what about having like a dinner and inviting over, I know it's COVID, but just having, your own families to talk about it one night. Because sometimes you think that maybe your children are those in your home. No, but there's so much. As
Yeah.
I said, we're just scratching the surface tonight, scratching the surface. There's
Mhm.
so much information that's out there, as me and Bishop and all of you have been looking and doing your research and listening online. There's so much information. I'm blown. Like, my mind is just like, wow, where are we going to start even tonight? Where are we going to start? How are we going to come out of this? Because there's so much information. And I think, yeah, families can sit down together, whether in the living room, and watch a couple documentaries, have dinner, talk about, a few of these, noble people. So that's, I think, a couple ways that I'm thinking. Anybody else can think of any creative ways, anything else in addition to what I mentioned?
I think it's important just to start the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that we talk about Black history and experience Black history outside of February, right? Like, as soon as February comes with
Okay.
and, Black history, let me get my information together, and, Black pride. And to me, like, I even put today on Facebook, like, I'm celebrating my Blackness all year round, not just this month. Like, I am proud of my skin color. I'm
Mm-hmm.
proud of my history,
Mm-hmm.
as a Black woman in Canada. I'm proud of, the strives that, my family has come. Both my parents are immigrants into this country. So I think it's important that outside of just the history of, contributions that Blacks have made, in times past, it's also important to talk about our own family history, to pass that along and to share the
That's
importance,
right. That's
and
right.
also to leave our mark the same way that others did.
That's
What's
right.
our mark? What's our legacy? Right? Like,
Mm.
we can sit and talk about Dr. Woodson. We can talk about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, all these different people who added to, society, whether it's education, music, whatever it is. But what is our legacy? What is our mark? And I think it's important that we go out into the world and leave an impression, whether it's volunteering, starting up charitable organizations, meeting with, government officials. What are some bills that we can enact, that we can start to, bring to light certain conversations? Can we talk about diversity in the workplace? So I just think it's important that we are starting to leave our mark on the world as Black
Yes. Yes.
individuals.
Amen.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I love that. I think even just to connect to that as well, the idea of leaving your mark, I think that's so powerful. And I think there's a quote that says, because I think sometimes we don't realize how much of an impact we can make as individuals.
Yeah.
And so we get discouraged, or we don't really push as much, or we don't challenge ourselves as much, because we're not even entertaining the idea of making such a mark, like, writing books and being an author and making a change.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
there's a quote that says, if you don't think one person can make a change, try sitting in an enclosed tent with a mosquito. Just that annoying little buzz that will get to you
Yeah.
Yeah.
throughout the night, no
Yeah.
matter how much you try to get away from it. That mosquito will have an impact, and it's such a tiny thing, will have an impact on you all night
Yeah.
long.
Love that.
And it's the same way that we can also have that, as small as we think we are, that impact, especially if it is a selfless cause, can go a long way.
Right. And as you mentioned, as small as we think we are. Because here's the thing, Dr. Carter, as I mentioned, one of his mission was to shine a light on the stories of who have gone before him, the predecessors. And I thought to myself, right? Because I'm thinking this generation, I don't think they appreciate enough their predecessors. I don't hear, young people, and I'm thinking when I was much younger myself, I don't know if we value the stories, right? Standing on shoulders of giants. I don't know if we really value, Elder John, the stories of our forefathers, and hence sometimes we don't our identity is not as strong as it should be. I don't know if you're following where I'm going with this,
I
right?
think so, yeah.
But I like how he was all about that. Education was not without highlighting the predecessors, what they've done, their blackness, their experience, as you said, Katura, right?
Mhm.
Experience, right? Because experience is such an amazing teacher, right? And I would like to see our young people, I would like to see not just young, but everybody. What do you know about your forefathers? What do you know about, as you said, Sister Rahor, your father, no shoes, right? You've been told that because you weren't around at that time, but here he came out as as a doctor, medical doctor, and I'm thinking that my, like the experiences that these people have gone through and the legacy that they have left, I don't see that happening today, and that's my concern. Is that I would like us in the whole educational bit is children, young people, everybody get to know as much as you can. Like, do I know my grandfather's name? Do I know what
Yeah.
he went through? Do I know what kind of job? How did they come up? What was their lack? What did they have? What did they not have? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I think I get that point, and Rahmat, you can probably speak to it because I think you're correct. You identified, I think one of the failings as well as I think one of the intentional
Mm-hmm.
attacks against blacks that
Mm-hmm.
we are still trying to address over here in North America. I know she
Mm-hmm.
can probably speak to it better in terms of some of the things that go on in terms of her own culture.
Mm-hmm.
But over here, for an example, I never knew what Dr. Carter what's it even look like, and I'll put a picture up here on the screen for us just so we can take a look at it.
Such
If
a handsome man.
if someone had showed me this picture beforehand, I
You're
would
like,
just
who's
think
that?
it's just a regular black guy that,
That's
someone
right.
from those days. I would
Mm-hmm.
have no understanding of the significance that man has played to my own
Thank
life,
you for
right?
that. Yes.
And I think that we don't necessarily appreciate in this generation, I said, and I'm going to say more so North America at least. And again, that we don't really have enough. And the reason why I said it was kind of part of the systematic plan is I recognize growing up that without these positive images,
Mhm.
everyone's looking for images that look like themselves, whether they know it or not, subconsciously or not. And if they don't see anything like themselves, they look for something to try
Yeah.
to emulate.
Definitely.
And I
Connect
think
to.
without these positive images, we've been flooded more with images that could be somewhat positive or maybe even negative. So, the young people are flooded with the rap artists, celebrities, artists, whoever, right? And they'll know their faces, they'll know their works, they'll know their music, right? They even kind of attribute quotations or quotes to past celebrities as if these were the wise, strong leaders of the
Mhm.
community, right? That we probably wouldn't have looked at, during that time.
Mm-hmm.
While these men who have suffered and women such as Rosa Parks, Woodson, all those people who have done that, these are not images that they see on a regular basis. So to kind of stem that to even part of the other question that you asked, I think we need to become proud to be black.
That's
We need to
right.
be proud to display that we're proud to be Black. Sometimes people are Black, but they're not necessarily proud to display it. Right?
Hmm.
We're still overcoming the narrative of changing how you speak or hold yourself up in the workplace. You know, as you're climbing the ladders for in the corporate America, so to speak, you have to sometimes change the way that you talk and the way you
How
share,
you look.
and you see it. You see these little funny memes and videos, TikToks talking about once you leave the workplace, all of a sudden they start changing, and now he's putting on a do rag, or now she's taking off her hair, her hat, and she's putting on something. She's tying it up now and kind of doing the pinto knots, and so you see that the play that people recognize that there's a difference between what you got to look and pretend to be like to be successful versus what it's not. And I think when we have some really good images that we can potentially put out there that say, I am this, I am Black, this is my hair, this is my style, and I'm proud to do that. I think that will help for this next generation to have something positive to look up to. I'm not coming against Tupac and Biggie and all these people and all that stuff, but I don't think that these should be the the emblematic markers of what it means to be
Hmm.
Black
Hmm.
when we have such great people who've done so much
Absolutely.
for our culture, like
So
Carter
much.
Woodson and Martin Luther King and all of those. So yeah, I think I don't think we appreciate it, but I don't know if they've been given enough information to even truly appreciate it. And they're saturated with so many different things that it's very hard to appreciate something you may have heard about maybe once a year, maybe for about a week or in a moment, but not really being, kind of seeing it so much in the forefront of
Can
your
I say
life.
something to that actually? Because
Yeah.
that's a great point. It's like
Mm.
I'm thinking, and this is no shade to anyone at all, but just remembering high school, for example, our high school was predominantly Italian, right? Um, and from what I'm remembering, there wasn't much of a focus on Black History Month. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but um, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, Black History Month, let's all celebrate.
I remember the posters. They put a
Posters,
poster
but
or two up on the
students.
wall. Yeah.
They were mainly done by us students because we went to guidance counselor. We want to do something, right? So I'm saying that to say is I don't feel that we should leave it up to anyone other than ourselves to really blast who we are. So
Mm.
let's not wait on TV networks to, have Black, diverse actors, right? In commercials. I mean, I get so excited, Mom, I get so excited when I see a Black woman with an afro in a commercial. I'm like, oh my God, Black girl magic. But we shouldn't have to wait on others to really highlight who we are and who we should
Correct.
feel like we are,
Correct.
right? Be bold, be brave in yourself. You know, I love. It's funny. I when I wear my little afro to work or on the street, someone will be like, "I love your hair." And I'll be like, "Thank you," and I'll be like, it's this or whatever because I'm proud of who I am. Or I'll wear a T-shirt that says something about Black Queen, and it's
Hmm.
not in shade to any other culture by any means,
Hmm.
but it's simply saying I am proud of who God made me to be.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to dumb down myself
Hmm.
to feel less than in a crowd of others. No,
Right.
we're all
Right.
made in the image of God. So I just
Right.
think we shouldn't leave it to anybody else to really, show how proud of a culture. We should be proud of
Right.
our own culture.
Right. I'm proud of the experiences that our forefathers, mothers
Absolutely.
have experienced, no matter how it looks. That's what I'm saying is that because those experiences, they're giants, no
Yeah,
matter they're
Yeah.
giants, Sister Rahwa, right?
yeah.
Right. No matter what, I remember stories of my parents telling us stories too, how they had to walk for miles to get water or to do this or whatever. They didn't have washrooms like we have today. It was
Mhm.
outhouses, all of that stuff. And I'm not ashamed of that. That's what I'm saying. Let's not be ashamed of that, right? But let's stand on that. Let's use those experiences and make ourselves better.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. And I think that's part of what Dr. Carter is really pushing out there like Sir Isaac Newton, that talks about how we stand on shoulders of giants. We're not going to see any further. If we don't know, I think who was it mentioned it right here. If we don't know where we're coming from, how do you know where you're going?
Hmm. Correct.
Right? Sister Rahul, you want to speak to that? Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that developing a culture of, open dialogue
Mm,
about, so even with you, assistant pastor, when you would talk about your father and tell the stories to us young people, those are stories now that we can even go and talk about and be and have our faith strengthened and increased because
yes,
of. And that's
yes.
not even necessarily directly our lineage, but the fact that we can be so close to you and those stories can be told to us, so intimately, make a difference for us as well. So I think, having that conversation is important. In a family dynamic, I think we should really push to,
Hmm.
talk about our history more and talk about, even if it isn't historic information, but just stories, like you're saying. Stories can be
Right.
very powerful. The stories are powerful. I mean,
Hmm.
if you want to get
Hmm.
any kind of a reaction or passion, it's through telling the story. So yeah, I think that that's a great way to even start it because it can manifest a lot from it.
That's right. And even my children, their grandmother, Mother Margaret Morris, um, the stories. One of these
Yeah.
days, tears came to my eyes when she shared her stories and seeing how she
Mhm.
persevered,
Yeah.
and to have a better life for her children,
Mhm.
her grandchildren, the two of you here, and now great grandchildren. It's because of shoulders,
Yeah.
giants that
Yeah.
kept at it. And you can just imagine how Dr. Carter, he persevered in trying to bring about changes for the next generation, and the next. So awesome. Um, I talked about here in 1950 how he drafted and circulated, because he was a writer. You said, Katura, he put pen to paper.
Yeah.
He was a writer. He drafted and circulated pamphlets that would promote this Negro History Week. And so we see eventually, officially, it was recognized as in February of 1976 by President Gerald Ford, right? So today, Black History Month is celebrated in a number of countries. February's USA and Canada, and
Yeah.
then I believe it's in October with Ireland and UK. I didn't even know that. As one born in the UK, I didn't realize that they celebrated Black History Month
That's
in
awesome.
UK. That's right. So it's just so important that we persevere and with all the obstacles, and we do um, make changes and be the change. Right? Someone says, "Be the change that people want to see." So those are some of the important points for me. Anyhow, I don't know if anybody else wanted to add before we're coming down. We're at the top of the hour, but if anybody wanted to add any more interesting points that we could share for the next 5-10 minutes before we go to our
Yeah.
Negro national anthem. Go ahead.
Well, I hear the theme that you've been sharing, which has been perseverance, and I see that we can't seem to let that go. It's interesting, right? He started it in 1926, where he started the Black History Week, and it took 50 years, right, before we got to see this, right, in terms of 1976 for the Black History Month. And again, this is why I'm so passionate about saying that these are the images that I wish our youth could see.
Mm,
We're still in a world where everyone's doing the get rich quick, or trying to hope to get somewhere and to realize a life goal or realize your life purpose at the age of 23. That may not necessarily happen, right? I know when I was traveling just a few weeks ago, and my wife and I were coming back, we were watching a little bit of a video clip in regards to the documentary about President Barack Obama, and just watching his life story
Yeah.
from a young child to when he eventually became the president. He didn't become the president at 25. It wasn't at 33 years old that he became the president of the United States of America, but you could see the passion and the fire and the determination that it took for him to get where he was. And not everything was success, right?
Right.
We saw where people were saying he talks funny, or he doesn't really have the connection to the community to be able to
Yes.
really reach out
Mm-hmm.
and relate to the Black community. You saw where he
Mm-hmm.
started doing, arranging events with the community and different things. And if you don't,
Yeah.
maybe that's someone to go look into. But I think the story is the same across the board. Any of these people that we've seen, Dr. Carter Woodson being, pretty much the catalyst, if I want to say to some degree, or at least the impetus that starts it, it took time, right? It really did take some time. He didn't just stop there. He wrote some books and he shared some stuff. I know we didn't get to talk too much about his views on Christianity,
I know.
I was
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
particularly. But I mean, just looking at a little bit of what he felt, he was so much against segregation, right? He was so much against us looking at Negroes and looking at being black as if it was a negative thing. That was kind of the problem he had with the church at the time. Is what he was seeing, where there's almost a segregation of blacks and whites and things of that sort,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of really encapsulate it very, very quickly. But I think for the young people today who are watching, I think if there is a lesson that you can take, um, is to recognize that it's going to take determination. It's going to take time. And I'm saying that to everyone today who is interested in Black civil rights or in the Black community, that we know that it's going to take some time. I don't want anyone to ever lose faith because it's been 4 or 5 years, and you think that just one situation of Orlando Castile, all of a sudden that everything's going to change, and it's perfect. It's not. But each step that we take is going to be a step that we take closer, and we have to continue the fight. So again, I think it's important that we are consistently patient while working. Don't just sit
Mm-hmm.
back and just hope one day, oh,
Right.
they'll just
Right.
accept us as we are. We got
Yes.
to do stuff. We got to be having the
Yes.
conversation and change the narrative at every opportunity that we get, but also recognize it's going to take time. I was sharing a little bit earlier, and my wife knows this, that I'm part of a Black professionals network with my company that I work with in the corporate world, and part of my role in the leadership team is dealing with allyship, and what that is trying to have the conversations with those who are not Black, those who
Mm.
don't identify as Black, and helping them to recognize what is it that Black people need in terms of helping,
Right.
right? It's different than what other groups and minorities might require, right? Some groups um, may require that we want you to be there with us, suffer with us, join us,
Mm.
be on the
Mm-hmm.
rally and the march
Mm-hmm.
with us. Whereas maybe Black allyship is not necessarily come pretend to be us. We don't need any Rachel DeLazas or whatever. We don't need that. But what we do need is open up the door when there is a meeting that Black people are not being invited
Right.
to and you're aware of. Get us in the door, open up the door, let us know
Good.
there's a meeting, right?
Yes. That's right.
And
Having
speak
those
up
type of
where we need you to speak
conversations
up.
and speak up, exactly, right? Learn what it is that what we're looking for. For an example, one of the examples, I was having a conversation with someone, when people say things like, "Oh, I have Black friends," "Oh, I have a Black friend," uh, it's the intent is to say I'm one with you. I'm an ally of you, right? Like I've got Black friends, right? Like we should accept you. But what ends up happening is you actually push us away because the fact that you have to identify that you have Black friends kind of makes it seem like, why are you separating your friendships based on color and
Right.
white? And it kind of actually
Mhm.
does the opposite. And so these are little nuances that people may not know. They might actually genuinely want to be an ally of Black history, of Black people, but not understanding what it is it required. So I think the
Which is why
conversations,
education is so important all across the
Yes.
board, just like you said at the
Yes.
beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely, it's so important for people to be educated, not just about the history, but also what is it that we need now, and what are the steps that we can take to educate our children, to educate our friends, in regards to what do we need to continue to push the correct narrative. I thought it was so interesting when you said, Pastor Morris, that they're having Black History Month in other countries. we generally see it as predominantly a North American thing. But it's interesting that other countries are recognizing, hey,
Yeah.
blacks have played a part. And I think if we were to actually be really honest, in probably every country, you can see that there is some part where there can be some Black history. I know
That's right.
I've talked to Sister Rafa about this, and people don't even know that there was such a thing as a Black samurai, a Black man who was
Yeah.
actually a Japanese samurai, full, real, bona fide Black samurai.
Really?
We
Yeah.
wouldn't know these things, right?
I did a little history on that too. I loved it.
So this could be a
Wow.
part of Black history. It's not necessarily North American, but it's still a part of history that maybe people wouldn't even know or people wouldn't really
Yeah.
normally speak to. So we play such an integral part in the world as much as anyone else, and I think we just want to be recognized, and we need to make sure that all of the everyone has a good image, not just young Black women and Black kids, because it's not just about the young Black kids having the right image. Everyone needs to have the right images. Young
Yes.
white children need to
Yes.
have a good
Yes.
image about Black. Young
Yeah.
Chinese kids need to have the right image about Black
Absolutely.
people,
That's right.
as much as anyone else. And so when we do that, then we can get closer to really, maybe realizing what this whole equality and what Martin Luther King was
That's
truly
right.
about.
That's right. When you said that, I remember when I was in high school. I mean, there was probably just about maybe two or three more Black families in my whole school.
Mhm.
And at the time, being a secretary was the big thing. It's just like they were telling you, oh, be a secretary. So they were pushing us into being a secretary. And as I got older, again, you all know the story. It was when you see examples, it's important that people see, they have an example what they want to strive to be, to
Yes.
become. And when I saw, this young Black woman going to university, I was told by that same individual that, yeah, you can do it. I'm like, I can do it. Yeah, you can do it.
Wow.
And I just said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it.
Wow.
So it's important that we believe in people. And as you said, Minister John, is that these young people and just people just see certain successful stories.
Yeah. And I think also when you have the opportunity to make a difference, like John is saying, when he's in his workplace and now knows that, okay, well, we should be a part of this conversation and I can do something about that. I think that
Mm,
makes a big difference to how things end up being. I'm reminded actually of my father at the time, back in the day, when when he met my mother for the first time, he was living in a different country, and so they actually, it's a funny story, but his family, or our families, the cousins, sent her over there to meet this man, to potentially marry. And he said, well, you know what, let's give it a try, let her come over, but worst case, if anything, I will help her to get an education. And she became a midwife, because of the help that he provided. And that was the mindset of like continuing that, the knowledge and education and empowering at
okay.
the time Eritrean women who did not have as much of an opportunity to get an education as well. So the influence that we have and the impact that we can, like, just recognizing that we can do something
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
doing it,
Yes, yes.
um, no matter the level. I think you, for example, hearing that you just had a seed planted of I can do this, can make a big difference to now your children and grandchildren, and it's a blessing to us ultimately
Amen.
for
Amen.
generations to come.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful chat. I wish it could be a little bit longer, but you know how it is. But we did say that let's do every week, every Tuesday on this month. We will talk about highlighting Black history. Next week, we can talk about Canadian Black history. All of us we're living in Canada because, as you know, originally Black history starts with the Americans, right, in the USA. So let's talk about next week, and we'll have additional guests joining us. The Canadian Black history, because again, there's so much there to know about, to learn, and to I love the word that you mentioned, Katura, is to experience Black history, right? And become and make history. I think that's what we can definitely do. So we're going to close off by having our Negro national anthem. My daughter loves this song, so you're not going to sing it tonight, but our engineer will play it for us as we close off. Thank you again for joining us, to all our viewers, to those of you who are on live and you'll be watching this after. Join us again next week as we continue highlighting Black history. God bless you.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies.
Let it
resound.
Let it resound.
Loud as the rolling sea.
I like this part right here. Come on.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on
Let us march on.
till victory is won.
Now we add a little something to it. Just to encourage you. We're going to take it to church later. Let's go.
Marching right until the victory is won.
To all my brothers out there.
Hold your head up, brother, till the victory is won.
To all my sisters in the struggle.
Keep